Hello everybody, this is TipTop MTG here today with another MTG Arena video. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to build an Akiri Fearless Voyager standard Brawl deck. I think Brawl is a really awesome format, and a major part of that fun is choosing a commander and building around it. It's a singleton format, which means that you have to choose a lot more cards for your deck than normal. Instead of just telling you what I built and then showing you some gameplay, in the spirit of Brawl, I'm going to start with a commander, tell you what cards work well with it, and then give you my opinions on it. I'm also going to give you my deck list in the comments down below, and you can check that out. And if you don't happen to have the cards for my exact deck list, or just don't like specific cards, you can build your deck however you want based on some simple recommendations. Akiri is a red and white legendary core warrior that rewards you for attacking your opponents with equipped creatures by giving you card draw, and helps you protect your equipped creatures by giving them indestructible. Of course, there's a little cost to that, but it has a very clear theme. It clearly wants to play a good balance between creatures and equipment, and honestly, that's a big challenge. Generally, I would recommend that you go lighter on the equipment than you're thinking. You can always win a game without equipment, but you can't win a game without creatures. Let's say you draw every single piece of your equipment, you are going to lose the game unless you can get it all on Akiri. But if you can get a steady stream of creatures, there's still a chance that you can win. On top of that, creatures are going to die more often than your equipment, so you need more of them in your deck. There are a lot of cards that work well with Akiri, so I'm going to break them down into a couple of categories. So let's first talk about just the equipment. So I would say one of the best pieces of equipment in Standard right now is Maul of the Sky Claves, at least in this deck. What it's going to do is it's first going to auto-attach, which means that you don't have to pay mana to equip it, which is really nice. Unfortunately, that does mean later on when, say, Akiri makes you unequip it from the creature to give them indestructible, it is a little bit more expensive to attach because it has that ETB attach ability, but it gives it flying, first strike, and +2/+2, which overall is a really good combination. First off, first strike in any deck that's all about boosting up a singular creature can be devastating. And then you combine that with flying, which is really going to limit their options anyway, and you have something pretty awesome. I would say the second most powerful is Ember Cleave. This one is, not going to be as effective as in something that is super, going super wide and then can make it cost 2 mana. But again, kind of like how First Strike's really good, Double Strike is even better. And then when you add Double Strike, Trample, and a boost, and instant speed so your opponent can't respond, that card is really devastating. So I would say Maul of the Sky Claves and Ember Cleave are the two big equipment in it. Now, another awesome equipment is Shadow Spear, and this one doesn't give First Strike, but what it does give is Trample and Lifelink, and that is a very awesome combination. It allows you to kind of turn your damage into sustainability, and it also has the added ability to remove Hexproof and Indestructible from your opponent's creatures, which may not be a huge deal, but if your opponent's running something like a Heliod Brawl deck, or any of the gods, or anything, even just playing a creature with Hexproof, you can use Shadow Spear to get rid of that and Indestructible. And so overall, I really like Shadow Spear, Ember Cleave, and Maul of the Sky Claves. They are my favorite equipment in the deck, but just because it's not my favorite doesn't mean it's not good. Mirror Shield is pretty cool. It is just hexproof and a little bit of a toughness bump, but first off, it is now a newer creature that is equipped, which means that it can be the one that attacks to draw you a card. It can be used as a, just something you put on a creature so you can remove it at instant speed to give it indestructible, but also it just gives it hexproof. And if you're going to spend all of this mana equipping this equipment to one creature, hexproof is not a bad investment. It's not as important as in an aura deck where if they kill your creature, just all of that is gone, but it is still a really powerful thing. And then if you do run into like Death Touchers like Shovel, the Mirror Shield can be pretty good there too. Then we have Mesa the Valiant. This one is a little contradictory. I mean, it's wanting to play a ton of little creatures, which really doesn't happen in this deck all that often, but it is at least interesting. It is another piece of equipment, and there aren't that many in Standard. Another one is Crystal Slipper. This one's nice because it gives the creatures haste, which means that your opponents have to constantly worry about, hey, what's going to be coming at me next turn? Even if they destroy all your creatures, and as long as the Slipper's on the battlefield, they need to be prepared for anything. And then, we have things like Bronze Sword, Cliffhaven Kite Sail, Relic Axe, Scavenged Blade, Shining Armor, Short Sword, Utility Knife, Wings of Hubris, and that's actually every single standard legal equipment that is either colorless, red, or white. The last, ones are very generic. They're either, plus attack defense, plus some defense. They are pretty generic cards, but honestly, this deck, the reward for having equipped creatures, I believe, is worth the, throwing in not that great of them. Now, would I run all of them? Probably not. I don't know if I'd run something like Short Sword, but it is an interesting selection of cards, especially in the first couple that I mentioned. Next, let's talk about creatures. So these are going to be creatures, that obviously because it's an equipment deck, any creature technically is good, but some of them just are better. For instance, Core Blade Master is going to give all your equipped creatures double strike, and to add on to it, the creature itself has double strike as well, which means that, if you put something on there that gives it +2/+2, it's actually kind of giving +4/+4, and that is just such a powerful ability right there. And also, the commander is a warrior, so the commander does get double strike as well, so you got some synergy there. We have Fireblade Charger, which is it's a red creature that's gonna kind of reward you for making it big, and then if it dies, you're gonna get to deal damage, so it's a little bit of a fun removal kind of thing. We have Acclaimed Contender, which is okay, I guess. It's relying more on knights here, but if you can manage to get it going, it's not awful. Now, would I rather run a first striker? Maybe, but this one does have the, it can go and get an equipment for you, although you do need other knights. Speaking of other knights, Fervent Champion, is a 1-cost haster with first strike. First off, first strike really good, but also it costs 3 less to equip things to him. So a lot of the time, the equip cost is going to be close to free. Maybe like a colored mana if it's a colored piece of equipment, but you're going to be able to just move things to him for free a lot of the time. And then he's also very quick. He can boost things when he attacks. He just does a lot of different things, and in this deck, it is very good. Other knights are things like Fireborn Knight, which has a little bit of synergy with wanting to be boosted. We have Kargan War Leader, which is going to care more about the warrior side of it. And similarly, Kargan Intimidator is kind of nice. It has the ability to make things not be able to block, which is good if you're trying to get in with one big creature. It can make things have trample. It can, it overall just cares about warriors. And if your deck cares about warriors and you have cards that care about warriors, they generally work pretty well together. We have Seasoned Hollowblade and Alset of Life's Bounty. I really like Alset of Life's Bounty. Why? Because first off, it's a lifelinker. Equipping a lifelinker with equipment never feels that bad because it gives you life, obviously. Now, of course, equipping this one does feel a little bad because it does have a sacrifice ability, but that sacrifice ability can also kind of protect your creatures. So, it works as both a shield and a sword kind of at the same time. We have Siege Striker, which is going to be an awesome double striker that can kind of get bigger, and since you only really need to attack with one creature, the ability for, you to tap down your creatures to make him bigger is really powerful because your commander, maybe he wouldn't be able to attack. Maybe he would be an unsafe attack and all your creatures are unsafe attacks, but you really want to get that draw trigger with Akiri. Well, attack, taps on your creatures, now it's a safe attack. It's a pretty good card, and of course, Double Strike is always good. Gingerbrute is really cool because it allows it to kind of gain unblockable. It's a colorless card that you can kind of just pay 1, and unless they have something that has haste, it is unblockable, and so throwing like an Ember Cleave and a couple other things on it can be really devastating. We have Heartfire Immolator, which I don't know if I'd really run this, but it has this interesting ability to sacrifice itself and deal damage equal to its power. So if you can boost up its power, maybe you can swing for like 7 again, boom, lots of damage. We also just have any creatures that are kind of utility, like Hushbringer's a good one, for instance. The deck doesn't really run many Enter of the Battlefield or Death abilities, so it doesn't really matter that those are being turned off, but like a lot of the enemy decks may use this Enter the Battlefield ability. It affects your opponents. On top of that, even if it wasn't the case, it is a flying lifelinker, which, like I said, lifelink, pretty good. And then anything that is a warrior or a knight is going to kind of work well with some of the other cards that I put on this list, and anything that cares about its power. So if there's something that says, do something equal to its power, it's probably going to be pretty good in a deck that's all about boosting power. but I think I picked some of the best ones. If I missed any of them in any category, if you're like, ooh, wait, there's this really good creature, why didn't you include it? Let me know in the comments down below. If it's, I'll heart it so everyone else can see. So check that out. And then we have some cards that maybe aren't creatures, but either, they work well with equipment. So we have things like Nahiri, Heir of the Ancients, which is going to let you create creatures, which is really nice. It's going to let you equip equipment for free, which is really nice. It's going to let you kind of look for warriors and equipment, which is really nice. And it's also a removal spell. So this 4-cost, very versatile Planeswalker will do a lot of what you're wanting to do. It's removal, it's card draw, and it's creature generation, which is key in this kind of deck. We have Resolute Strike, which is an interesting kind of card that's going to work well with equipment. It's going to boost a creature, and then you can instant speed kind of move around equipment. We have Kazul's Fury, which is going to let you sacrifice your creatures to deal damage. So again, you kind of like the scenario with Heartfire Immolator. You swing for 9, sack it afterwards to then deal another 9. Maybe that just wins you the game. Similarly, Fling is Kazul's Fury, but without the land on the back, but costs 1 less. We have Unleash Fury, which is going to double the power of target creature, which can be pretty good. If you have a 5/5 double striker, which isn't that insane, maybe you Ember Cleave something, double strike trample, you can then make it a 10/5 double strike trampler, and that can very quickly be lethal. And Raking Claws gives something double strike, so it's not going to work on something that already has Ember Cleave, but if you can boost something up to be like a 6/6, Raking Closet, it's going to get double strike. And then if you don't need the card, it can also be cycled away and give you another card. In terms of ramp, obviously we're on Boros, so there aren't that many options, and this deck is a pretty fast deck, but most decks can get away with running things like Arcane Signet, and if you really wanted to, you could maybe do a Solemn Simulacrum. It does give you a card draw, ramps you a little bit, and is a creature that can be equipped onto. It's one of the nice things about equipment decks is that any sort of like card that is a creature that does something is automatically going to be better than in an average deck, because the deck really just wants to make sure it has its creatures. And if you're drawing, say this had green in it, Cultivate instead of drawing Solemn Simulacrum, well, Solemn Simulacrum is going to be a card draw spell, a ramp spell, and a creature to equip to. So even if it's not that great of an ability, it is another creature that if you need more creature slots can be kind of cool. In terms of card draw, the commander is card draw, and in that kind of situation where the main ability of the commander is card draw. In that situation, I think that you don't really need to throw in that much card draw. On top of that, we're in Boros, which doesn't get that much card draw, but other things include things like Bonder's Enclave, which cares about you having big creatures, which you are probably going to have if you are, equipping things. Crash Through is an interesting one, and Mangara, who's also a pretty good creature to throw in the deck because it has lifelink. So yeah, those are kind of card draw spells. Now, I do want to say this deck is a very generic equipment deck. It is not something super duper special in terms of, oh, this commander has a weird ability, so we're throwing cards that synergize with that ability. No, we're talking more about the theme of equipment. So if you're looking at this deck and you're like, well, yeah, I like being able to draw a card whenever I attack, but is that really worth it? You may want to look at throwing in something like Nahiri into the command zone and throwing Akiri back into the deck. Nahiri, Akiri, Either way, yeah, any kind of equipment matters legendary, such as Akiri and Nahiri, are going to work well in this deck, and I could consider throwing Nahiri in the command zone. And then removal, you have access to white removal, so you have pretty good removal. You have things like Banishing Light, which I will always use as an example. Why? Because it's a 3-cost enchantment that gets rid of your problems. Yes, it can be destroyed, but generally it's a 3-cost enchantment that can get rid of your opponent's creatures, planeswalkers, enchantments, artifacts, anything that's really an issue unless it's a land. And then you also have access to board wipes like Shatter the Sky, and actually board wipes are pretty good in the deck, and this is one of the ones where it's more specific to Akiri, but I could see a version of this deck that runs more board wipes than usual and uses the fact that Akiri can unequip those to make people indestructible. So you can kind of turn Shatter the Sky, Shatter the Sky plus 3 white mana and unequip all your stuff. You can kind of have an asymmetrical board wipe that kind of just unequips all your stuff. It is a little bit convoluted, but it is something that can happen, and you may be able to get away with running more board wipes in a creature combat heavy deck because of that indestructible ability. overall, you can build the deck however you want. These are just some cards that have a decent amount of synergy with the commander, and you may not have thought of. I mean, some of these are a little obvious. Ember Cleave is probably going into an equipment deck, but some of them are something you may not have thought about, like Fling, which is gonna kind of allow you to maybe get that final hit through. I mean, there are lots of cards. I didn't talk about every card. There are some interesting cards in here, such as Fiery Emancipation, which is gonna triple all your damage, which is kind of just an equipment for everything. Of course, it doesn't count as equipment, but in a deck that wants to win purely through damage in this way, it can be kind of cool. And of course, add any and all cards that care about creatures. I mean, this deck cares about winning through combat. So things like Luminous Broodmoth's gonna be pretty awesome. And actually, now thinking about it, going off my script, Zerta the Dawnwaker is also a pretty awesome card that's gonna let you kind of equip things for less. But generally, just look through things like Basri Ket, Fight as One, anything that gives your creatures protection even. Just cards that care about creatures and winning through combat are going to be amazing, so you really can't go wrong. Of course, add any card you like. Add more removal, add more equipment than I recommended, add a way to copy the equipment. Maybe there's a way you can do that. It's mostly in blue, so probably not, but of course, add any cards you like. Also, if I missed any awesome cards that Akiri synergizes with, let me know in the comments down below. Anyway, my deck list is in the description. It's not a perfect deck in any way, but I messed with it a little bit on live stream on my channel. I did one of those, trying to test it out a little bit, and I'm considering doing more. If you want to see those, let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, it was really fun. It's not exactly my style of deck, and most of the time when I do these Brawl guides, I'm like, yes, this is really awesome, because I do Brawl guides on them. I definitely had fun playing it, but it's not the kind of deck that I would want to repeatedly play over and over again, just because it is kind of just play creatures, swing, attack. Of course, there's a little bit of complexity when it comes to what do I equip to, but overall, it's a fun deck if you like that style of deck. Either way, I think I've said either way like 30 times at this point. Akiri's really fun. It's just, look at the style. If you enjoyed this video and found it useful, hit that like button. I have a whole playlist of Brawl guides on my channel now. Since rotation, I've only had a couple of them. I've had Omnath, which has now been banned. We had Kaza, which is really awesome, and you guys should check it out. It's kind of like the wizard counterpart to Akiri in terms of it's just really awesome. And yeah, if you guys have any suggestions for commanders you want to see in the future, also comment those. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. I will see you in the next one. Bye.